Welcome and welcome back, everybody, to the OK Grognard Show. Today is Wednesday, April 8th, 2026, 10 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And today we're continuing our discussion of the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, Player's Handbook, and Dungeon Master's Guide sections on Infravision, Ultravision, and Invisibility. This is part 2. There's probably going to be a part 3 and maybe even a part 4 and or 5. So, not and or. If we have a part 5, we're going to have a part 4, right? It would be nuts otherwise. That'd be cuckoo crazy, and we don't do that. Anywho, here we are. We're looking into the DMG section this time. So last week, just to recap, we took these 3 chunks of the Player's Handbook on Infravision, Ultravision, and Invisible Movement. They're kind of interrelated, so it made sense to put them all into one video or series of videos. But since we do bite-sized sort of videos, 10 to 15 minutes tops, we can only put so much into a single video and have to do multi-parts. Would it be better to do an hour and a half? It's not my style. Martin Thomas does a great job with that. He's a supporter of this show. Over on Daddy Roll to One, he does that long-form breakdown of various topics for old school D&D, and they're fantastic. Go check them out for sure. But, I do 10, 15 minutes a week. I'm not looking for this to become a part-time job. It's just something I enjoy doing, and so I do it. Anyway, Infravision, Ultravision, Invisibility, and in the case of Player's Handbook, under the section Invisible Movement, all very good. And I guess the next thing to look at would be to start looking at the stuff in the Player's Handbook, and that starts with Infravision. And you'll see here why I wanted to make sure I covered the Player's Handbook stuff. Let's look at the section in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's on page 59 and 60 on Infravision. As explained in the Player's Handbook, it says, Infravision is the ability to see light waves in the infrared spectrum. Characters and various creatures with infravisual capability out to 60 feet standard are basically picking up the radiation from their surroundings. Therefore, they note differences in thermal radiation, hot or cold. They do not see things, quote unquote, see things, which are the same temperature as their surroundings. Thus, a room in a dungeon might look completely blank as walls, floors, ceiling, and possibly even some wooden furniture within are all of the same temperature. Openings in the walls should show up rather plainly, as space anywhere else will, if you are generous. You can allow different substances to radiate differently, even at the same temperature. For example, the wood in the example above would be discernible if care was used in scanning a room infravisually. Note that air currents might show up as cold or warm layers, except where very warm or very cold objects are concerned. Vision of this sort is roughly equal to human norm on a dark and cloudy night at best. Note also that monsters of a very cold or very warm sort, such as a human, can be tracked infravisually by their footprint. Such tracking must occur within 2 rounds of their passing, or the temperature difference where they had trodden will dissipate. So they're saying that there is some room for interpretation as far as how the DM adjudicates this. So you may play in one game or another game and have 2 very different DM adjudications. And they're going to be similar in that they are using the same basic overview that they were given in the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, and yet even within this paragraph, you're seeing some suggestions as to how things can be done one way or another. Sounds like a truck's backing up outside. Outside the studio. Yeah, there you go. Let's continue with the next section here. Light sources which give off heat also absolutely prevent normal infravision from functioning within their sphere of illumination. Explain this as the effect of trying to see in the dark when the observer is in a brightly lit area. It requires not less than 2 segments to accustom the eyes to infravision after use of normal vision. Creatures with infravisual capability of unusual nature, such as those which see infravisually to 90 feet, are actually emitting infrared radiation from their eyes and seeing what is within this visual range by receiving the reflected radiation. Such creatures can easily distinguish floor, ceiling, wall, and other areas, as well as furnishings within an area. The eyes of all such creatures will appear as very brightly glowing red when observed by any other creature with standard infravision. Most monsters inhabiting underground areas will have this form of infravision. Infravision outdoors enables the individual to see figures which are warm or cold at 100 to 300 feet, depending on the temperature extremes. Vision is otherwise equal to bright, starry night with full moonlight. So what is being suggested by all this is that it's not ever going to be like a regular sight. You're not looking with infravision at a regular room. Able to pick up colors, for instance, is going to be problematic. So if there was some sort of pattern one was looking for, the picture on a tapestry, for instance, will unlikely be showing any sort of differences between the colors, or it will just look like one gray blank sheet. So too with paintings or anything that was put on a wall, unless it was done so recently that the substance used, somebody wrote on a wall in blood in the last minute or so, right after the blood was taken from, say, they poked their own finger to create something they could put a note on the wall with. Within a couple of rounds, while that blood is still warm from the body, it would radiate some heat, and thus you'd be able to read it. But that would dissipate, as they say, as with the footprints, within a couple of rounds, maybe a little longer with blood. It was inside, after all. And if you're leaving radiated footprints, it would probably be through the soles of boots, so there's some, slowing of that radiation going from one section to another. I think what they are getting at with infravision is it's not a cure-all to not being able to see directly with regular light. So, looking at all of that, I think with the time, we're going to leave this. We're going to deal with Ultravision next time. We'll do a little longer recap, since Ultravision is a shorter section, and that will bring people up to speed who haven't seen the first two and contextualize what we're talking about with Ultravision, which is important anyway, because ultimately Ultravision is going to have to be in comparison not just to regular vision, but also to infravision, which is more common. Let's point out, too, that the thing we need to know about infravision and creatures, as it's stated here, is that there's a sort of more discerning sense of ultravision, or rather infravision, inherent in creatures that primarily live underground or have done so their whole life. It's developed more acutely than someone who lives above ground but has some infravision when they go underground or into the darkness. That all being said, let's actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and talk about ultravision real quick. Ultravision is the ability to see radiation above violet in the normal visible spectrum. Unless this ability is of highly unusual nature, so as to be able to see far into the spectrum, ultravision will not be useful underground, where radiation is screened out, without some sort of ultravisual emanation. Magic weapons which shed illumination spoil ultravisual capability, just as heat does infravision. As noted in the player's handbook, ultravision enables the viewer to see outdoors at night as if he or she were in twilight, so vision extends clearly for about 100 yards, dimly out to about 300. On particularly cloudy nights, ultravision capability is reduced to about half normal, clear sight out to 50 yards, dim to about 150 yards. I point out at this point, since I've mentioned it before in other videos, I don't switch from feet to yards, from indoors to outdoors in my games. I just find it a pain in the butt to do conversions and for explanations with players, and especially newer players. Why was that conversion? Why not just set everything to a certain scale and keep it the same indoor and outdoor? I understand why, but explaining why seems to be a bit complex sometimes, so I leave it at that. So the ultravision is a different sort of vision. It's not necessarily a better sort of vision. It's good for outdoors when there's a little bit of twilight going on. It definitely enhances your ability to see at night, but it is not the same as infravision as explained here. And also, all right, well, it's also a lot less prevalent in the game amongst creatures, so it doesn't come up as often in original and first edition Dungeons and Dragons. That being said, I think we'll leave it at that, and we'll save all the invisibility stuff for next time, and maybe we'll keep this at 3 parts that way. So it goes. Hey, I want to thank everybody who popped on in. It's very much appreciated. Thanks also to everybody who's checking this out on YouTube. I will say, yeah, we'll leave that. All right. This has been the OK Grognard Show, taking a look at the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master Guide sections on Infravision, Ultravision, and Invisibility. This has been part 2. There'll be a part 3 next week, possibly a part 4, but maybe it doesn't look like there will be. We'll see how we get it done next week. Don't forget, the show streams live on Twitch each Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central, and then it's archived on YouTube. Like, subscribe, follow, do all of those fun things. Feel free to leave comments. We love constructive criticism. It's always helpful. And you can, of course, support the channel even at the free level on Patreon and join such illustrious followers and supporters as Tom Tullis of Fat Dragon Games, Carlos Lysing of Castle Entertainment, Heath Farndon of the AD&D 20, Dave O'Brien, unauthorized user, Dethangel Shadow, Heidi and Eric Gygax Garland of Gaxland, Vince Ragusa of the Maroon Room, excellent prog rock band, Daniel Caldwell of Griffin and Gargoyle, Martin Thomas of Daddy Rolled a 1, top-notch YouTube channel for old school D&D information, Christian Garcia, Stephanie Lesniewski-Gruchow, Cera Toppilopkus, Colin Szablewski, Sergeant Zeno, Bruiser, Nate Mosier, Rod Garcia, John Smith, and as always, Shane Bradley, DM Extraordinaire.
This has been the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Thank you, and bye-bye.